Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty is funded by Congress through the U.S. Agency for Global Media, an independent federal agency. Broadcasting in 27 languages to 23 countries, they're the free press many countries lack. Jamie Fly is president and CEO of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and he's based in Prague. Jamie, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So start by telling us the mission of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and how long it's been around.
So we've been broadcasting for more than 70 years. We were set up several years after the Second World War. And our mission is to serve audiences in countries where freedom of the press either does not exist or where it's under assault. And so we're operating in parts of Europe and Central Asia and parts of the Middle East where there is not a tradition of vibrant independent media, and we try to fill that void to be a neutral, independent news outlet for audiences.
And how have you evolved since the end of the Cold War?
Since the end of the Cold War, a lot of things changed for us. We moved here to Prague. We were based in Munich, Germany during most of the Cold War. And we transitioned away from being primarily a radio news organization to being a multimedia news organization, to getting into TV programming. We have a 24/7 Russian language TV network called Current Time now. Many of our individual language services do significant TV programming. But more and more, we're interacting with audiences online on digital platforms. So providing news and information through websites, through all the major social media platforms that are popular across our coverage region.
So you had been operating in Russia until recently. What happened?
So we've been serving Russian audiences for our entire 7 decades of existence. We've had journalists working inside Russia for more than 30 years. We've had a bureau in Moscow since 1991. But we faced increasing pressure from the Kremlin even before the invasion of Ukraine. Our journalists being harassed, our journalists being labeled essentially as spies, as so-called foreign agents. And we got into a legal dispute with the Kremlin where they were fining us for failure to comply with some of this foreign agent, these regulations that they had established. So in the wake of that, and in the wake of the invasion in Ukraine, and the growing pressure on journalists, the fact that for reporting the facts about Ukraine, you can face now potentially 15 years in prison, we decided to suspend operations at our Moscow bureau and to limit the reporting that we're doing from Russia just because of the risks that journalists currently face in the country.
So is there any way now that Russians can access your broadcasts and get access to information?
So we're still producing content from our headquarters here in Prague. We've moved some of our Russian journalists outside of the country to Prague and to other locations to make sure that they can still do programming for Russian audiences. And we're providing that information still online. Our websites are now blocked in the last several weeks, like those of many news organizations. But Russians can use circumvention technology, virtual private networks, mirror websites that are constantly changing URLs to access our content. And even though our websites have been blocked for the last few weeks, we're still seeing record numbers of Russians come to us to find out what's going on in the war, to find out the broader implications of this war on their economic situation, and to interact with our content through many of the platforms they were able to use before the war.
I was going to ask if you had any metrics. Do you know that that information is getting through, and is it having an impact on Russians?
So we certainly are able to track traffic to our sites, despite the websites being blocked. We also are able to interact with our audiences in environments like this in Russia, where we have less access now on the ground. We often turn to user-generated content, so asking our audiences to actually submit videos, to submit tips that they might pick up, that we can then do additional reporting based upon and then share back with the broader audience. And that sort of dialogue with the audience has continued despite these attempts at censorship. So we do know that there's a certain segment of Russians that are hungry for this information, that are willing to take risks to engage with our content, and even at times to send us information.
And you have reporters on the ground in Ukraine, in many cases reporting from the front lines. What are they telling you about conditions there in Ukraine?
So we've got a very large Ukrainian language service that has operated for decades in Ukraine. Our largest bureau is actually in Kyiv. We've moved many of our journalists to another part of Ukraine where they can operate safely. But we do have some field reporters who are out on a daily basis covering the fighting, both highlighting what's going on from a military perspective, but then also interviewing civilians about the impact on them and their hometowns, as many of them have had to flee. And so it's a very dangerous situation. We have journalists who have been covering conflict in Ukraine and the fighting since 2014. But this is a completely different level of conflict where the front lines are constantly shifting. And so from a journalist perspective, it's incredibly dangerous. Even if you are embedded with security forces, you never quite know where the front lines are. And there's also some disturbing reports just in the last few days that the Russians, as they take over certain territory, are actually targeting journalists, in some cases shooting at them, but in others detaining them as part of a concerted effort to suppress information about what is truly happening in Ukraine.
Jamie, do you think you'll ever be able to go back to Russia and start reporting from there again and open that bureau in Moscow?
We certainly hope so. And when you look at our history, where we operated for decades from afar, often broadcasting to countries where we had no access on the ground, we now are operating in bureaus in most of those places. Our journalists live side by side with our audiences. Our headquarters here in Prague is in a city where it was for decades illegal for us to operate, where we went to great lengths to try to get news and information into what was then Czechoslovakia from Germany. And now we have 700 employees here in Prague alone, providing news and information to 23 countries every day. And so taking that long view, we're confident that one day we'll be able to reopen our bureau in Moscow, and we'll certainly continue to report from inside Russia using technology and using new arrangements with freelancers going forward.
All right. Well, Jamie, I appreciate you taking the time, and good luck to you and to all the reporters that you have there.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.